So welcome back to another one of my videos here at 300 Baud. I'm your host Sean, and today's feature is the Mammoth Toys C64, oftentimes referred to as the DTV, Direct to TV. So what we have here is a Commodore 64 re-implemented in a single chip built into a joystick. Now I've owned this unit since it was new, and it's a bit dirty, so I'll probably give it a wipe while we're discussing the system. But this is one that was released, I don't even know what year anymore, probably about 10-15 years ago. And at the time there was a company called Tulip Computers. They owned the rights to the Commodore branding, the Commodore name, and they licensed this out to Mammoth Toys. It's a really cool little system in that it was one of the first commercial replacements to the original Commodore 64. Prior to that, Commodore went out of business and hadn't produced, Commodore 64 has been out of production for several years. So it was a pretty exciting thing to have a Commodore 64. Now another thing that's really neat about this is it's actually set up for kind of do-it-yourselfers or hackers. You can open this up and modify the motherboard, reuse it. You can hook up a disk drive, a VGA output, I believe VGA output. You can hook up joystick controllers. And also the ROM supports going directly to a Commodore 64 mode. So that allowed you to basically create a Commodore 64 computer in a custom case. So pretty neat little system. Again, this one's been sitting in my closet for many years, so it's pretty dusty, but it's cleaning up fairly nice. You'll notice a few features on it. First of all, it's designed to look like a Competition Pro, or I believe a Competition Pro Joystick, which was a pretty popular joystick back in the day when Atari was still around with the 2600. Now, this design of a joystick lends itself to being held like this. So you'd have typically, if you're right-handed, you have your left hand on the stick, or on the base, and then your right hand up here. And this one is a 2-button joystick. Now, I don't believe the original Competition Pro was a 2-button joystick, but I might be wrong. We have a left button, and we have a right button over here, which makes it difficult to get to the right button. Now, what you can do is you can use a finger down here and hit it that way, but it's not an ideal 2-button joystick is really what I'm trying to say. It also has a row of buttons down at the base here. We've got a reset button and then buttons A through D. What these buttons do is they can be programmed to represent keys on the Commodore 64 keyboard. For example, if you need to push an F1 key, you might want to program it as an A. If you need to press the 1 key, it might be an A, or an Enter key. Maybe you have an Enter and D. So it really depends on the game that's being programmed for it. We have our LED light and our on-off switch down here. This system is purely battery powered. So we've got our battery box down at the bottom. This one uses the screw type, which I really dislike. I think it's much nicer when they use the friction-based or pressure-based system where you just push in and you can open up the batteries. In this case, you always have to find your screwdriver to change out your batteries. Now, battery life is pretty long on this. I actually had it sitting in a closet for a long time and had the original batteries in it, which is not a good idea. You really want to remove your batteries from these devices so that because the batteries will explode and they'll get acid all over. But as you can see, I got a re-implementation of a Competition Pro Joystick here. This one is actually designed to run on a PC, because this one has a USB connection on it, so it'll plug in your USB ports, where this guy does not. This one actually plugs into the AV jacks on a television set using either NTSC or PAL, depending on your region. This is this is an NTSC system. Not the PAL system, because I'm in North America. They're similar in looks, but you'll notice we don't have the buttons along in here. The heights are a little bit different. Placement of the stick is a little bit different. About the same height. The Mammoth Toys C64 does not have micro switches in the stick. Now, I've been using it for a little bit, and it's actually nicer now. It's not as creaky or stiff. It's actually kind of loosened up a little bit, so it's not bad. This one, on the other hand, this is really hard to use. It's a micro switch, but it takes a lot of force to get that to move, and it just doesn't get better with play. So I've never really used this much. It actually came packaged with a Commodore 64 collection. Actually, let me show you. Yeah, so this joystick I got bundled with the Commodore 64 Forever by Clotno, and you can see it's a 2009 edition. So this has been around for a while, but I've got a CD-ROM in here, and it's got the software, and it'll emulate the Commodore 64 on your PC. Not very nice. So enough about that. Why don't we go ahead and get into the Mammoth Toys, and I'm going to do something a little bit different. On the end of this video, I am going to rate this system. I want to start putting together a rating system, and we'll call it the baud rate. So let's get started. So powering up the unit, we're going to get the familiar Commodore logo. It's a bit stretched, a little high here, and this isn't, I guess it was designed for a widescreen monitor. Here's our copyrights for the various companies. Notice this, Commodore 64 and the chicken head logo. And here's our very familiar Commodore 64 boot screen. And it's actually just pretending it's loading, so it's loaded the first thing. Starting with epics, these games fall into 4 basic categories: sports, racing, arcade, and adventure. There's actually 2 games from the World Games series. There's this bull riding and flying disc. But out of the 2 World Games inclusions, this is definitely the best one. I honestly can't figure out how to play this game. I don't have the instructions for it, so I've tried pushing back and forth to keep the cowboy on. And you can see I got a little bit of distance there, but I still get kicked off. In the sports category, we have the excellent Summer Games, a button-smashing sports simulator similar to Activision Decathlon, and then an arcade hit Track and Field, where you play as an Olympic athlete competing in track, swimming, diving, shooting, gymnastics. You can play against yourself, the computer, or a group of friends. Of all the events, I find diving to be the most fun. Jumping off a diving board, tuck and roll, and pull out before hitting the water. Summer Games was released for the Commodore 64 in 1984 and ported to several systems to include the Apple II, Atari 2600, Atari 7800, the Atari 8-bit computer family, the Sega Master System, and has sold over 250,000 copies. The game was definitely a huge success. The Commodore 64 version is quite good, as Epyx took full advantage of the system's VIC-2, video chip, and SID sound chips, providing fast gameplay, smooth animation, enhanced music, and sound. This is especially nice when playing the national anthems of the country of choice. After loading the boot menu, we are presented with a list of 30 built-in games, 18 published by Epyx, 11 by Hewson, and a single title by ImageWorks. The Epyx collection is my personal favorite, as it has good representation of the Commodore 64 in its early years. I'm not as familiar with the games from Hewson, but they are colorful, animated well, have great SID tunes, and exactly what I would expect from publishers in the eve of a system's lifespan. This is due to the fact that programmers have really mastered the hardware and allows them to really push the system to its fullest ability. The first game by Hewson is Cyberdyne Warrior. This is your typical run, jump, and shoot platform game. The next game on the list is Cybernoid. This is a pretty cool space shoot-'em-up game that features lots of colors and big sprites and large enemies. And if you can't get enough Cybernoid, how about Cybernoid 2? I do have a digitizer, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get a clean signal out. So I ended up capturing this with my camera. Let me know in the comments what you think. Should I use a digitizer or film it with a camera? Eliminator's game action is a little on the slow side. The color palette's a little drab, and the tempo of the music is also a little slow. But for whatever reason, all 3 of those combined makes for quite a fun game. Exxon features large, colorful sprites and large enemies. Graphically, it's very impressive, but it is rather frustrating to play. Firelord is an action-adventure that can be a bit of a hot mess. Sorry folks, I just don't find this game very interesting. In Paradroid, you're a ball that rolls around and shoots other round balls. I really gave it a go, but I found Paradroid just about as exciting as Firelord. Ranorama is an interesting dungeon crawler that you play as a frog that runs around and shoots other things. The sprites are single colored, but I think this is interesting and definitely worth maybe exploring a little bit. Tower Toppler was one of the later games being released in 1987. It was available on many European systems and also American systems. In Europe it was released as Nebulous and Tower Toppler in the US. The goal of the game is to destroy 8 towers controlling a creature named Pogo. The game reviewed well and is actually a lot of fun to play. Iridium is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up similar to Activision's Dreadnought Factor. In Iridium, you take command of a Manta-class space fighter and battle enemy super dreadnoughts positioned in orbit around 15 planets in your galactic sector. The game offers fast action, multicolored sprites, and a simulated parallax starfield, a trick developed by the programmer as the VIC-2 graphics chip does not support parallax scrolling. Overall, I would say this is a good game. Speedball was developed by Bitmap Brothers, a British video game developer known for their Atari ST and Amiga releases. 1 or 2 players battle it out in an arena where violence is rewarded. Collect coins to purchase power-ups and give your team the advantage. Awesome gameplay with graphics close to that found on the Amiga and ST. A must-play. Sumo comes packaged with the NTSC version of the C64. It's a mini-game from the World Games series. Sumo wrestling is an awesome sport, but I'm not sure about this game because I can't figure out the controls. Supercycle is a home version of the arcade hit Hang On. The gameplay is similar to Pole Position, but on a motorcycle. You can customize the color of your jacket and your motorcycle. Surfing is a mini-game from the California games and represents one of the coolest games made in the 1980s. You compete against yourself trying to catch Big Wave to get the highest score possible. This is a great game that I highly recommend. Sword of Fargal is an early dungeon crawler originally developed for the VIC-20. It is similar to earlier Epic's dungeon crawlers, but it takes advantage of the VIC-20's ability to redefine the character graphics. This allowed for graphical representations of the various creatures that you would encounter. In this game, you are on a quest to find the Sword of Fargal and escape the dungeon before the time runs out. Developed by the Connolly Group and published by Epix in 1983 as a prequel to Temple of Apshai, Gateway to Apshai is one of the first graphical action-adventure dungeon quest games. The game was released for the Commodore 64, the awesome ColecoVision game console, and the Atari 8-bit computer family. Gateway to AppShy provides smoother and faster graphics and improved controls over the earlier Temple to AppShy. In Gateway to AppShy, you play as an adventurer who is summoned by Merlis, the son of the greatest warrior of AppShy. Only you, as prophecy tells, the adventurer, can reclaim the fabled Temple of AppShy and rid the land of its monsters and curses to reach the Temple of AppShy. You begin the game armed with a simple dagger and clad in leather armor. As you progress through the darkness, you will discover items such as new weapons, armor, spells, to aid you on your quest. But it won't be easy, as the creatures you encounter get progressively harder as you descend deeper and deeper into the dungeon. But don't spend too long there, as there are 8 levels and you only have 6.5 minutes to explore each level. This is a game that I always wanted to play, and is an excellent addition to the DTV.
Another visitor. Stay a while. Stay forever.
Impossible Mission is a platform run-and-jump game in which you race against a clock to stop an evil genius, Professor Elvin Adambender, who is believed to be tampering with national security computers. But to get to the professor, you must locate password pieces that are hidden within various rooms, which you will need to unlock the control room. This isn't going to be easy, as the rooms are patrolled by robots who want nothing more than to stop you from completing your mission. Best be quick, as the timer is running out. Originally written for the Commodore 64 in 1984, the Impossible Mission was released on many platforms to include the Apple II, Atari 7800, ZX Spectrum, Acorn Electron, BBC Micro, Amstrad CPC, and the Sega Master System. Impossible Mission 2 is a direct sequel published by Epyx in 1988. The graphics are completely reworked as it was originally developed for the Atari ST. It was ported to many systems to include the very rare Enterprise 128, as well as the Apple II GS and the Amiga. Gameplay is very similar to Impossible Mission 1, but in this game the professor is seeking his revenge with new traps, new enemies, and devices such as bombs and mines to be discovered along the way. Championship Wrestling is a wrestling video game released in 1986. It is said that the game was to be a WWF licensee, but that didn't materialize. So no Hulk Hogan, no Andre the Giant, or any of the other greats of the time. But instead we choose from 8 Epyx characters to include the Berserker, Purple Haze, H-Man Slayer, Zake Weasel, Prince Vicious, Colonel Ruski, KC Colossus, and Xanto Clower. An interesting game, but you will struggle with the controls, especially if you have not read the manual. It was ported to the Apple II, Atari ST, Commodore 64, and surprisingly, the Commodore 16. But unfortunately for the DTV, the taunting scenes were cut, leaving the game rather flat. Jumpman Jr. is a run-and-jump platform game published by Epyx in 1983. The action takes place on a Jupiter Command substation where you must use your speed and agility to defuse bombs planted by the alienators. I had first seen the original Jumpman in a small computer shop, playing on a Radio Shack color computer. The level of details and the action taking place on the screen was out of this world. Jumpman Jr. was released on cartridge for the Atari 8-bit computer family, the Commodore 64, and the ColecoVision game console. It has the same gameplay as Jumpman, but with 12 new levels, down from the original's 30. At the time, floppy drives were very expensive, so reducing the number of levels allowed the game to fit on a 16 kilobyte cartridge. This allowed for greater sales, as many did not have a floppy drive at the time. Jumpman Jr. is a great game that is definitely worth a look. Pit Stop, released in 1983, adds a bit of strategy to what otherwise would be a pure racing game, as it implements pit stops where you control the pit crew to refuel the vehicle and replace damaged and worn out tires. Speed burns fuel, collisions damage tires, and pitting takes time, especially for the inexperienced. So unlike many games of the time, you had to race with a bit of caution and plan your pitting, master the pit crew, and avoid running out of fuel or absorbing too much damage to the car. The game was available for the Atari 8-bit family, ColecoVision, Coleco Adam, the Commodore 64, and as a bonus, the ColecoVision version used the Coleco's expansion module to steering wheel and pedal control peripheral. Pit Stop 2 was a sequel to Pit Stop. It added two-player, split-screen action and improved graphics. In what appears to be an effort to increase game difficulty, the car tends to violently change directions in a corner, making for a less enjoyable gaming experience. In addition to the Atari and Commodore, this game was released for the TRS-80 color computer, the Apple II, and DOS computers. Silicon Warrior is an interesting game released for the Commodore 64 and Atari 8-bit computer family by Epyx. In the year 2084, the Cyborgs, a superhuman race of technocrats, develop a computer with more RAM and more artificial intelligence than any other computer built by mankind. But a secret is held within the system's memory banks, which the Cyborgs have sworn to keep. Members of the Earth's hierarchy of new technologies sent their most skilled warriors into the future to battle on the grids made by Cyborgs for the ultimate one-to-one combat challenge. You are one of these chosen warriors. Your mission is to program 5 of the Cyborg computer chips. You must link 5 chips diagonally, vertically, or horizontally to discover the source code that will unlock the secrets of the mysterious 10th generation computer. I guess this is a fancy way to say, let's play a game of Connect 5. International Karate is a martial arts fighting game developed and published by System 3, the same team that brought us The Last Ninja, a groundbreaking game remembered for its breathtaking isometric graphics. Unlike most fighting games where you beat the life out of your opponent, in International Karate, you are working to get a solid hit to score a point or half point. Matches can be quick with only 2 full points required to win. Graphical touches abound with the game featuring backdrops from around the globe, and to keep things interesting, you are challenged with mini-games between the matches. Selling 1.5 million copies, International Karate was a very successful game, and it was ported to many systems to include the Commodore 16 and 64, Apple II, Atari 8-bit family, MSX, ZX Spectrum, Amstrad CPC, Atari ST, DOS, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance. And with that, we have completed the review of all 30 games packed in with the C64 by Mammoth Toys. So let's move on to the baud rate. For my new baud rate rating system, I have chosen 10 categories that I feel best represent the hardware from a collector's point of view. The highest score possible will be a 10 for a maximum score of 100. Starting with faithfulness to the original, I give the DTV a 7 as I feel it did a pretty decent job. The original packaging wasn't period correct. I threw mine away. But the entire system itself is contained in a joystick modeled after Competition Pro. Very nice touch. Quality of hardware. Due to the creakiness of the joystick, the DTV only gets a 6. I suspect the inners are quite cheap, so with hard play it wouldn't last too long. Choice of games gets a 6. Thousands of games were published for the Commodore 64, and this collection, although not bad, is not among the best. But as a sample of early 80s Epyx games, it's good. Initial impression, I give the DTV a 7. It looks good and offers a large collection of games to keep you busy. Replayability, 7. For me, it comes down to the Epyx action adventure games. I didn't have a lot of time to truly play with the system, but I would like to go back and spend some time dungeon crawling. Collectability, 7. Not because it's rare, but rather something that is fun to add to a collection. You may want to get 2 as a matter of fact. That way you can keep one original, and the second one you can hack into a custom Commodore 64. What kind of case would you put yours into? Overall value, 7. Out of the 30 games, most are worth playing at least once. A few I could see myself coming back to. Availability, 6. It has been out of production for a number of years, but a lot were sold, so it isn't too hard to find them on eBay. Graphics, 6. Only a few of the games show off the Commodore 64 in its full glory. Not to mention the DTV offers a horrible quality video output through its composite video. I think an S-Video mod would clean it up quite a bit. Sound, 7. The DTV SID emulation isn't too bad. The Hudson games have decent music tracks, and a few of the Epic games as well. This gives us a total score of 66 out of 100. That's all I have on the DTV for now. I have more content on the way, so if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to my channel. And feel free to leave your thoughts and suggestions below. Thank you, and see you soon.